Hey everybody, and welcome to the December 2024 edition of the Instructor Community Call. My name, as always, is Kyle Rosenthal, and I really appreciate and thank you for joining us. I'm going to take off my hat because the green screen is playing tricks with it. So welcome everyone. I see that we've got quite a few people that have joined us today, which is excellent. And I know there's a lot of people who have also signed up to be able to get this later on. All right, so the agenda for today, for our last session for the year. So a few things. We've got, our usual sort of roundup of some of the Microsoft courses, and obviously there's a couple of things that have changed. Well, there's one thing in particular that's changed dramatically over the last 7 days. So we'll have a dip into that. Then we've got our special guest for this month is David Elfassy from Netlogon. Who will be able to talk to us all about exam development and some of the processes in there. Now, I know we've had Liberty Munson earlier in the year, which sort of like Liberty talked to some of the processes once we're out there, once we're past the exam development part of it. So David's is a really good resource for that, and known David for quite a few years, and he's definitely a good person to have a chat with. And then our instructor recognition, our final one for the year, including a wrap-up of the year so that we can see sort of how far we've come. And then some of the links, the usual sort of links that we have. So as I mentioned, my name is Kyle Rosenthal. I've been reminded a few times this week for various different things. I'm a strategic account director, not account executive, which makes me sad, apparently. So, and I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. And I've been a Microsoft certified trainer now for just over 25 years. So it's been a while. And David, who will be joining us, the founder and president of Netlogon. So that's the two faces and voices that you're going to hear over the next 45 minutes or so. All right, so here's the big one to kick off with, right? So with the Microsoft updates. Now, remember last month we spoke about the fact that the Microsoft were retiring some of the Azure passes, and that was going to be retired. We were working on getting the cloud slice versions of most of the courses, etc. Now there was a big announcement that Microsoft sent out to partners on the weekend, which is basically Microsoft passes are retired. Various different reasons for that. They did put that in the post that they sent out to the learning partners or TSPs. So it is what it is. So good news is that for the majority of the courses, the cloud slice versions have been released now. There are a couple that have been retired, or there's at least one that's been retired, which is the AZ 1005. So that course has been retired, but the rest of them have had cloud slice versions of the courses built out, with the exception of AZ 2001 and the SC 200. Now, with those two courses, they can technically be run without Azure passes, or sorry, particularly the SC 200 can be run technically without an Azure pass. But you or the student or both of you have to have your own subscription to be able to run it in. Obviously not ideal. We are working on cloud slice versions of both of those. Obviously this timeline of everything kind of being dropped as of this week for the Azure passes kind of has accelerated some of that timeline, but it's not something that was unexpected. Just the timing was a little bit sort of was a little bit of a new one. But if you've got, like, if you want to have a chat with your operations managers, there is Azure Pass, Cloud Slice versions now available of everything apart from those two courses. So they'll need to make sure they're using that version for the courses, and obviously as the trainers in the room, you're going to need to make sure you go through those courses just to see that that what's changed, because there are things that have changed. For those who've used Cloud Slice, that there's restrictions that are put on it. although there's guardrails more than restrictions. So there will be some things that you may not necessarily be able to demonstrate within that Cloudslate environment that you might be used to doing. If that's the case, don't forget that as an MCT, you also have an Azure subscription, so you can actually do some of that demonstration within there. But just sort of, like, as I said, it is what it is. There is good reasons that Microsoft made the decision for it. So we've just got to get used to it. We've got to, this is now the new world that we're living in. Newly published courses. So there's some new courses that have come out this month, and so those include some of the AI courses, some GitHub courses, as well as some Copilot courses, etc. So new courses are still coming out. There's as MCTs, there's always rumors of the death of the MCT program and the Microsoft training program. They're coming out, right? So we seem to be in that a community of folk that there's always someone who's going, oh, everything's going, nothing's going to live, but it's not the case, right? So there are new courses coming out all the time. We might see if I can get for one of our future courses, I'll see if I can get one of the folk who's looking at sort of how the courses get developed, so then we can kind of look to see what that process is as well. All right, now moving on to exams with Mr. Elfassy. So David, do you want to come into the screen? There we go. All right, now. All right, well, David, thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate it. I know there's there'll certainly be folk that are watching the recording of this who will know who you are. But you want to give it a little bit of an introduction about you and Netlogon and give us a little bit of who you are. So.
Sure. I heard you mention before that you've hit 25 years in MCT. If I didn't let my MCT lapse, I would have hit my 27th year now. I stopped after 21. So my background is certainly technical. I used to be a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm going to say all the way back to MCSE in 1997. So I know that dates me and ages me quite a bit, but that's all right. My background is certainly in Microsoft certifications and Microsoft technologies, and quickly pivoted into building certification solutions, building certification exams. And our company, Netlogon, builds certification exams and other validation products for technology companies. So a lot of companies that you might be familiar with in dealing with their technology solutions, we build their certification or validation products. So what that means is that effectively we build the majority of questions and validation products that go into exams, whether those be practice exams that are what we consider low stakes exams, or high stakes exams, such as certification exams. We build the content that goes into those. We work extensively with subject matter experts in the various technologies and products because we don't have certification expertise on all technologies in-house. So we work with probably somewhere between 500 to 800 subject matter experts a year on various technologies, and ensuring that the various certification and validation products are effective and reliable.
So I guess a couple of questions that come out of that process, right, is how do you approach the beginning of it, right? Like, so say for instance, if you're being approached by a company that says, I want to be able to have a certification, or like I'll be able to do some certification testing, what's the starting point? Like how do you, because obviously presumably it's around a particular subject, say for instance, product XYZ, what's the process that goes from there? Like how do you make that first leap into it?
So I'm sure you know this, and when in proper project management, we build based on a plan, not on a vision. So a lot of companies may have a vision of having a certification solution or a certification program, but we need to plan it out first. We need to design it. So the first step is actually determining what skills are going to need to be validated on. So we need to determine, assuming that we already have an audience or a definition of our audience. So let's say we want to certified security engineers, for example. So we're going to need to determine what skills are part of the security engineer role. And so we work with subject matter experts to define an exhaustive list of skills that would be part of that role. What's a security engineer? It's a broad term. We need to define it in actual task and actual skills. Then we take those skills and then we determine which of those skills need to be just for training. So skills that people need to be trained on, and other skills that they need to be validated on. So there's certain things that are very theoretical that we can never validate on, or very esoteric that we may not want to validate on. We may just want to train people on. And then we determine that subset of skills that are just going to be the validation skills. So what are we actually going to validate for to determine whether someone is a qualified or an unqualified security engineer? And we will work with subject matter experts to define those skills and then define that parameter, that actual line in the sand where we say anyone above that line is qualified and anybody below that line is unqualified. And so we work with psychometricians, like you mentioned, Liberty Munson from Microsoft. We work with psychometricians that help us determine that value, that number, that pass score, that cut score that we call, that determines whether someone is qualified or unqualified. Essentially, it is really a line in the sand that we have to draw, but we work with a team to determine whether or not that's accurate. And it's a moving target, by the way. We may decide that the line in the sand is at a specific value today, but 6 months from now or a year from now, we may determine that, we need to move that line in the sand, and that happens often.
And then, like with the so when you've got that initial bump of this is what it is, this is what the who the focus of the exam is going to be, the skills that you're going to be doing the testing of, and then looking to see how you're sort of working to do that line in the sand, etc. How do you then go to and obviously as part of that wider part of a wider program, or if it's part of a wider program, or if it is the test that's around it, how do you gather, like, say for instance, those subject matter experts? Like, what's the process within there? Like, is that what's the process?
So we work with subject matter experts throughout our process, right? So again, the process initially is planning. So we're creating that list of skills. Then we actually build out the questions that go in the exam. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then after that, we verify and we validate all of those. And we do that continuously. So we have sort of a continuous education aspect to managing certifications where technology continuously changes. So we have to have subject matter experts continuously reevaluate the content to make sure it's still up to date and accurate. So initially, we need to find subject matter experts that have that deep product expertise. And usually we look for people that have in-depth skill with a specific product, but also all the associated products. It's important to know what should be part of a role and also what should not be part of a role. So sometimes we look for subject matter experts that have these broad external skills. And then we train them. So we'll actually take the subject matter experts that have that product expertise, and then we'll train them on exam question creation or validation skills creation. So that means, telling them all about what are the core tenets or principles of creating good exam questions, which are, not to be tricky. We want to be fair. We want to be reliable. We want to be accurate. We want to be precise. We want to talk at a specific language that is non-ambiguous. We don't want to use ambiguous words that have double meanings, right? So we have all these elements that we train the subject matter experts on to ensure that they're bringing that into the exam creation process.
And so you've got the subject matter experts in. You've given them the training on how to like how to create the items, like, and also how to be not. And I think like that bit about not being ambiguous about the words, and that's the thing about being used. Like, I think we've all experienced exams or that sort of thing in the past where you look and you go, what do they actually mean? So I think like that part of it is a really like that's the part where because there's no one there to ask, right? You can't go, what do you mean about this? Like it has to be something that's clear and you're clear on. So like I think that process is a very important part of that process. So you've done that, you've trained them up, and then you then you then give them a subject to be able to write some items on, or is that that's the sort of the next sort of steps in the process, or
So we involve a process that differs based on the stakes of the content. So I touched on that before. I said we have high stakes content. So definition of a high stakes content is someone that actually makes a difference for someone's job. So whether or not you pass or fail this exam may be tied to a promotion in your job, may be tied to a job opportunity. It's something that someone will use as a determinant to see whether or not you are qualified to perform a specific task or to be hired in a specific role. So that's what we consider to be a high stake exam. An example of that would be, you mentioned before, SC200 is a Microsoft certification exam. That is considered to be a high stakes exam. Right. We also have low stakes assessments, such as practice assessment. So you take a practice assessment, there's no one is going to look at your results as a determinant of making an employment decision for you. So the process that we use to develop exam questions is different if it's low stakes or if it's high stakes. We use more subject matter experts to review content that is high stakes. And what we do is that we have a collaborative room, so a virtual room. We used to do this in person. We now do it virtually, where we have a number of subject matter experts that sit in a room and that pick a question apart. So they are looking at every aspect, every word in that question, and trying to determine whether or not the correct answer is 100% correct, the incorrect answers are incorrect, and make sure that we're not misleading a candidate, someone that's taking the exam, into a wrong path. Are we giving them the right information? Are we misleading them? Are we trying to be tricky? Are we not telling them something about the environment that we should be telling them? Are we being really, really clear? And if we're not, then we're going to make modifications to the questions to make sure that they are as clear as possible. And an example of these ambiguous words I was talking about before is, for example, the word with. We try not to use the word with because the word with can have different meanings. You kill a man with a gun. What does that mean? So did you kill a man that was holding a gun, or did you kill a man using a gun? So there's different meanings associated to that. And that is something that we don't want to have, these sort of ambiguous meanings. And I know it's sort of the word with is something that seems very simple. That word itself is a word that we try to stay away with because it has these double meanings. And one of the things that we do as well beyond that is whenever we talk about translation, we try to use words that will also translate very easily. We don't want words that will translate into other languages in a way that can then mean something else in another language. And because we don't have knowledge of all languages that it will be translated in, we try to use very clear, simple words that we can expect would not have double meanings.
Right. I was going to say that I'm curious about what that exam is that you're writing that has involves someone being killed with a gun, but that's a discussion for a different day.
Not at all. It's just clearly an example that we give. Luckily, we don't have to have any certifications on firearms, and I don't know if we'd be qualified to do it. But interestingly, we do now build certifications on the Skillable platform that give you sort of that real hands-on validation. So all these principles that we use for creating multiple choice questions or other types of questions are the same principles that we use to build skillable environments that are used for validation. So we try to make sure that the environment is clear, that the environment doesn't have tons of information information that we don't need it to have, and that it's built in a way that a candidate would expect it to be built in a real world environment.
Right.
And that allows us to then get away from words and be more focused on the technology itself.
And I think that probably is also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that also makes it to an extent easier for if things actually change, like, in the technology side of things, because it's more, in that case, it's more outcome based rather than process based to be able to get to, like, you're focusing on being able to, and like, as you point out, like, running on the Skillable platform, that's sort of part of what we like. That's part of the heart of what we aim for, right? Is that on the Skillable side of the fence, like, it's like the idea is to be able to prove your skill, so show an outcome, versus being able to show me necessarily the working of how you got there, because as we know, sort of like, with the Microsoft folk on the call will know that, say for instance, if you're looking for an outcome within, say for instance, Windows, there might be 16 different ways to get to that same point. They're all correct. Some of them might be more efficient, but they're all correct. So, yes,
That's right. I don't, we shouldn't be determining how someone performs a task. We should only determine their success in that task. And that's one of the great ways of that we leverage the platform into these validation solutions is I may encounter someone that has a strong Unix background that wants to use Bash as a method of scripting an AI solution. And then someone else may just be familiar with the UI, but may have really deep understanding in building AI solutions. These two different candidates are getting to the same result. They're going to build the same solution. They're just going about it completely differently. Well, when we're using the Skillable platform as an underlying environment for validating a skill, we don't prescribe to them which methodology they should use to perform a task. We're just telling them, this is your goal. This is what you want to achieve. Do it the way you want to. And we're providing them a set of tools for them to do it in any which way they want. And that to us creates a more real life, better representation of someone's skills. And
this is probably not a discussion for you, but it might be something that you've seen anyway. Like, it's probably, I think that sort of process of the way of testing someone's skills, obviously, like, that might also lessen the risk to an exam as such, like, or to questions, like, say, because it's not just simply deterministic A, B, C, D, that sort of thing, like something that's maybe easy to rote learn from brain dumps and that sort of thing. Like, it's something that you actually have to be able to do the actions to be able to work out. So that might also be a side benefit of it as well, perhaps. So
I would say that it's a double-edged sword. I can't say that. Right. So, like, when you talk about brain dump, so for a listener that may not know what a brain dump is somebody just taking a copy of exam questions and then somebody's brain dump of an exam and then using that when they themselves go to take an exam as an advantage. So the theory is that if we have a real life environment, then we rid ourselves of this brain dump issue. I would say that in some cases it's true, not in all cases. We have seen cases of, candidates or individuals that actually have scripted versions of what goes on in a live environment, right? So when you think about it, it's a scripted version of a brain dump, essentially. So it's not foolproof. I think the biggest problems that it solves is the continuous change of technology, right? So if we're talking strictly about Azure and Microsoft 365, these technologies are changing daily. Nobody really knows when they're going to change. There are hundreds of project managers or product managers at Microsoft that are able to make changes into Azure. And sometimes it's just a small component in Azure. Sometimes it's a bigger component in Azure. There's different individuals that are part of that review process. But sometimes these changes take us by surprise, right? There are changes in technology that may take us by surprise. And having a real life environment that changes on demand and in reaction to that, because there's just a new version that's being instanced, That is certainly an advantage in solving that problem, because if we have a multiple choice question and we're calling a product one thing and then Microsoft has renamed that product, it may take us several months to update the exam into renaming it properly. The same thing with screenshots and so on. So that is a big advantage.
Yeah. I know from in the past having discussions with students about various different products and that sort of thing. It's like, well, so just so you know, this would just be aware that the exam, or the sort of questions that you were going to get maybe historical questions, right? So therefore, this new thing that got released yesterday doesn't exist. so that's the sort of thing that, and you're right, like with more sort of, any cloud environment, that becomes more and more of a challenge as things start ramping up and getting faster.
Yeah. That's true, but so I have to say though that Microsoft certification exams, they do get updated very frequently. I don't believe Microsoft publishes the frequency at which they get updated, but they get updated very frequently. If you go into the exam study guide for any certification, it actually gives you a date as to when it was last updated. Yeah. So if you try to map that to a release of Azure, a release of a product, you can usually map it pretty well. So there is information that will help you, but yes, it is possible that some of that outdated terminology for a product name or functionality stays in there. But I think we're getting very good at that. So I have to say that that's probably an issue that was truer before 2020. And in the last 5 years, we've been really good at maintaining the information very current, both in the training and in the certification exams.
And then, so on that idea of maintenance and that sort of thing, like with the exams, like the Netlogon, like participate in creating that thing. Do you ever see any of the feedback from the people that actually do the exams? Like, the feedback about, well, we're talking about the clear language, or like there might be some things that people will read, like that they might read, and it's gone through multiple folk who have all gone, yeah, that looks fine, that's fine. But then there's someone who goes, I have no idea what that meant, and might put that into the comment. Does that ever get back to you?
Yes, I really, I can't stress that enough, that it's really important. Any type of feedback that anyone has during an exam, and there's a comment period at the end of each exam. Every single comment that anyone adds in any language of the exam actually gets reviewed, and it gets reviewed by someone who actually will take it seriously and will evaluate that feedback. And sometimes that feedback can result in a response that they will get. Sometimes they will not get a response, but each item of feedback is reviewed. It's reviewed by both Microsoft and the vendors such as ourselves that manage the content, and all of it is taken very seriously. And I have to say that it's regular that we will take feedback and that we will make changes based on that feedback. Not all feedback is actionable, and not all feedback will yield to changes into the content, but some definitely does. So we look at it very seriously.
There's a question that it's like just in the chat that you might be able to sort of, I guess, talk around, maybe not necessarily exactly into, which is how well does the Skillable method map to a successful certification exam outcome? The comment is that I know of many who can reach the required outcome on an exam but not pass the exams. So is there, again, I'm not asking for specifics within there, but is there a generic sort of valuation that goes in?
So maybe you can clarify what do they mean by the Skillable method?
Well, so I think as in like just using the hands-on component within the within there, I believe. So Hermione, if there's something that you go like, if that's not, if we're not interpreting it right, then please drop that into the chat as well. But I think that's what it meant.
I can certainly talk to the point of, let's say someone does have a lot of hands-on experience with a product and that they don't pass a certification exam. Why would that happen? So usually it's due to a very clear representation of what they do in their role with that product. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that the certification is Microsoft Teams, and it's managing Microsoft Teams. So managing Microsoft Teams may have about 25 or 28 different objectives, so different type of tasks that would be validated on that exam. And it's possible that in your organization, maybe you don't use a PBX, or maybe you don't use policies, or maybe there's different components of Microsoft Teams that you may not use. The other aspects of Teams are some things that you do every day and yet you're very strong expert in. Well, in order for you to be able to pass a certification exam, you don't need to know every aspect of every objective well enough. But if it so happens that those objectives that you're less familiar with have a heavier representation in the exam, then it is something that you need to go and fill that knowledge gap for yourself. So you may be very familiar with Teams, but not all aspects of Teams. So at this point, what we recommend is someone that has that experience with a subset of the objectives or subset of the skills that they're already very familiar with. Find out those skills that you're not familiar with, and then fill that gap with learning expertise such as Skillable Labs, or getting additional technical articles on that subject to fill that gap. And then that, in addition to your experience, will allow you to pass the certification exams with no trouble.
And I think that's where, harking back to something you mentioned earlier about, like, in the case of, say, for instance, Microsoft exams, having looked through that study guide to see basically if you can tick the box in all this, like in all the items in the study guide, then you should be fine. But there will be, because of the breadth of products now, like sort of, like you mentioned Teams, like, Teams, AWS, Azure, whatever it might be, like, like there's always this, I know product XYZ, and it's like, well, actually, no, I know product, this part of the product, but the product is actually this large. And then, of course, when you're actually doing, like, when, for the purpose of exams, generally you're being tested on this rather than just this part. Like, obviously, there's things like, there are some products that actually do test around just specific skills within there, but like in general, like sort of the certification exams are going to be much wider. So so like you need to make sure that the wider part of it, not just the road through the farm. You need to know the entire workings of the farm, sort of thing.
There's a huge breadth of skills that are covered, right? And actually, one product that is recently introduced specifically to solve this problem, or to fill that gap in the need of validation, is the Microsoft Applied Skills. So the Microsoft Applied Skills are much more targeted validation solutions. And I use the term validation because that's the term we use in our industry. A validation product is an exam, a test, a practice assessment, anything that tests someone's ability is a validation solution. So Microsoft Applied Skill is a hands-on validation solution that is focused to a targeted set of skills. So think about an exam, like a certification exam, like MS 700 on Microsoft Teams would have 5 or 6 broad skills. Well, an applied skill would have just one. So an applied skill, a Microsoft Applied Skill, would target just one, and then you'd have to take about 4 or 5 to cover the breadth of an entire certification exam. So that's something specific in Microsoft, but other vendors, also other organizations, have targeted validation solutions that go to specific skills that are not job role based. So something that doesn't map to an entire job, somebody's entire role, it is designed to validate a specific targeted skill. Yeah.
And I think, like, it is particularly, like, for someone who's going to validate their skills or certify on a particular product, or it's important to know which type of testing it's going to be, right? Whether it's going to be that breadth or whether it's going to be more depth in that particular version, like in that particular skill and that thing. So I was just about to wrap us up. There's a question from Dennis. Do you think that certifications like CCIE or OSCP are more valuable in the market because the exams are long and practice-based?
So that's a great question. So I'm not familiar with OSCP, but I am very familiar with CCIE. It's also a product that we work on. CCIE actually, so there's different levels of certification with Cisco: CCNA, CCNP, CCDE also, which is a newer level certification, and then CCIE. All of those. All of the Cisco certifications are quite valuable. CCIE has, I would say, more of a prestige than many other certifications because its reputation has always been that it was quite difficult to achieve, and based on the fact that it was hands-on, but not only that it was hands-on, but it's hands-on with multiple interconnected solutions. So not only do you need to know about specific products, but you need to know how these products work together. And that's the part of CCIE that is sort of unique in comparison to many other certifications, the ability to you to demonstrate your hands-on skills of multiple interconnected solutions. And so from that perspective, I think that CCIE is a very valid certification. It is not only hands-on. So that's something that's important, is that it's not only hands-on, there are non-hands-on components to CCIE, but it is quite a valuable certification. I would say that Cisco has done a great job in ensuring that it retains its luster. Does it have more, is it more valuable as a validation skills than other certifications? I would say that it can be equally as valuable as other certifications, because there are other certifications that do hands-on as well. And there are certifications that are multiple choice or case study or that have other components that are equally as challenging. Let me backtrack. Not necessarily equally as challenging, that are also very challenging, and that also are very discriminatory in the way that it identifies between a qualified and an unqualified candidate. So to me, a validation product, if it's able to efficiently determine whether someone is qualified or unqualified, it is valuable. However, if we talk about the value of a certification in the market in terms of as a tool for employment or advancement in career, then at that point, it's not necessarily about the validity of the certification, but more about its recognition in the industry. And so to that, I can't speak of beyond what I've already said, but certainly these certifications are well recognized in industry.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So I will wrap us up now. So David, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate your time. As always, it's fascinating to talk to you about this sort of thing. So if someone is interested in becoming like a subject matter expert, should they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody wants to talk further about certification, whether to work as, to assist as a subject matter expert, most of our subject matter expert opportunities are paid opportunities. And if anyone wants to talk further about certification, whether it is in their company or another company, I'm happy to chat. And I'm sure, Kyle, you can provide my contact information, and happy to chat with anyone who wants to discuss this further.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's just like a bit of a call to action, I guess, is that, say for instance, because I know that we do have, like, we've got folk who join the calls who are not MCTs, that sort of thing, so but are still, like, might be looking to have within their company or within their the products they supply, because we've got folk that have their own products, to be able to put some of that certification in process. So reach out to David and the Netlogon team. They are a great resource for that. So thank you very much for joining, David. Really appreciate it. And
thank you.
We'll move on, and I promise I'll share my screen this time. So thanks, David.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I know what the problem was. I went into the backstage area of everything. So therefore, you've enjoyed the PowerPoint deck, but not what I've been presenting. All right, so I'm assuming everyone can hear me now. Just someone say yay or whatever in the chat. Okay, right. Audio, that's fantastic. Thank you. All right. So what I'm saying is basically, if this is your first class or your 750th class, congratulations. It means a lot to the students that you deliver to, and in particular, if we go on to our next slide, which is the number of students reached, and this is the impact, right? This is how many people you affect. So I know that Ivan's on the call, so congratulations, Ivan. Really appreciate you joining. Actually, so I see Farhan is joined from our previous slide, so congratulations, as well as Aaron. You didn't hear me say congratulations, but really well done. Jermel is not on. Wellington. Can't see my list that's here at the moment. And yeah, so okay, so I'm just now what I've got is I've got a list of people who are currently in the call. This is the ones that are on here. So if I missed your name, I really apologize, but I really do. I want to say congratulations for, again, your first student, or for those that have done over 5,000 students, right? Anywhere along that journey, just know that as an instructor, you have had an impact on someone, right? And it's when those numbers really start coming up and adding up, right, that you then start seeing how much of an impact that's been. Like, as an instructor, when you have someone in the class, they may walk away with a bit of knowledge that they didn't have at the beginning of the week, that when they then leave, and they go back to work, that may not necessarily be straight away. And as David said, like, there's some things that that maybe if they're doing an exam, they get a promotion around. There may be some bit of knowledge that you've imparted to them that then means that they go, I know what that is. I know how to solve that problem, and then that increases their value at their in their job and that sort of thing. So congratulations, really think about the impact that's like that you've had, and take a moment to appreciate. I said, if it's your first student or if it's your 5,000th student, just the difference that you've actually made to someone. So really huge congratulations for those that have reached milestones this month. A little bit of a wrap up for what we did this year, or what, not particularly what you did this year, right? So 9,500 badges were issued to over 4,800 instructors, and yes, the upside down 8 is probably bugging you just as much as it does me every month. Actually, every time that I use our font for this. And we had over 2,000 of those instructors teaching their very first class, right? And who then reached their first learners. And then on the other scale, we had 250 that delivered over 50 classes. So there's a huge spread within there, right? So congratulations to all of you, right? Over 300 instructors that have reached 1,000 or more learners. So if you think about that, that's 300,000 students that have been impacted by those 300 instructors, right? More than that, right? And 12 of those have reached 5,000 to 8,000 learners. Massive amounts of impact that you have had on students within your classrooms. So as you reflect back, as we get towards the end of the year, as an instructor, if you're doing that grind within the classroom, and you think, I don't know why I'm doing this, or if you're getting to that point of going, well, what is it that I like, that what difference do I actually make? Think about those numbers, right? And think about, the impact that you actually do make in the classroom. And, congratulations for all the efforts that you do. And this is obviously, from a Skillable perspective, thank you for your support of the Skillable platform. But more than that, just thank you for being instructors. Like, we need more instructors. We need more people who are willing to stand up in front of a class, or stand up in front of a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, to be able to reach out and pass on that knowledge to other folk, right? Because that's how the people that are coming through, whatever the industry is that you're in, whether it's IT, whether it's something, whether it's more knowledge based, whatever it might be that you're doing your training in, that's how that next generation comes through. So yeah, so thank you, really thank you. So, all right, becoming way too emotional about these things. All right, so just a reminder, and moving on from that, reminder about the offers that we have available. Obviously free access to prep for your classes and to be able to expand your knowledge. If there's other, if you're practicing for a particular class, then that's log into the class. You've got access to it. But if your organization also has access to other content, whether it be the Microsoft content, Veeam, whatever it might be, whether it be your own content from within the instructor, within within your organization, then you also have access to be able to go and practice on those as well, and to be able to then leverage off our environments. If you're an MCT, you do have access to the mock lab access, so make sure you take advantage of that for the free access to all of the labs that we have within the Microsoft labs. As well as that, as an MCT, you have access to the All Access Pass. So with the All Access Pass, that means you get access to all of our challenge labs. So there's over 1,000 of those to be able to go and expand, not just within, for the MCTs, not just within the Microsoft world, but also maybe have a peek into other technologies as well. And we have that same offer for any AWS instructors as well. If you do, obviously instructor recognition, which is what we've got there. If you do want to sign up for any of those things, then skillable.com/offers is the place to go to be able to see those. All right, we are at time almost, so well, technically we're over time. We might just sort of throw it open for a couple of minutes, just for a minute or two. If you do have any questions at all, throw it into the chat, and then I'll try and answer them as best I can. Otherwise, while someone's doing that, if you're going to put that in, some of the resources that we've got. So obviously the instructor recognition, make sure you're looking at that. I had an email from someone yesterday who had 5 or 6 different accounts on our platform. And so they got a badge and they're like, well, that badge seems quite low because I've got all of these other ones. So like I said, they've dropped an email and got, hey, can you get this fixed? So we'll get that sorted out. So get all the their numbers consolidated. The instructor dashboard, we talked about that last month, I think, from memory, which is sort of like maybe the month before, but like it was the home of where you as the instructor can go on our platform. And then obviously if you're in the Microsoft world, go into skillable.com/mock. So skillable.com/mock, and that'll get you to our the home of the Microsoft content, and that's where you can see some of those updates, and that's something that might come through. If you are on Slack, then join our Slack channel, join the instructor Slack channel in Slack. As well as that, share any ideas that you might have through feedback.skillable.com. If you go into there, you can, if there's ideas about how we can improve the platform, that sort of thing, then please, jump into there. If you go back to the beginning of the year, I think maybe January or February, we actually had a chat with some of our product managers around that, about what happens with that feedback and how we can, how that kind of, how we evolve into what your, or take that feedback and actually take some action on it. So, all right, well, nothing's coming to the chat. So it comes to thank you very much. Thank you for your patience for today. I think everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong with the session today, but we've made it through. Thank you for being with us for another year. For those that have joined us for the first time, welcome. For those that have been here for a while, thank you for keeping on coming back. If there is topics, if there's things that you go, actually, I would love to have, someone talk about this, or, if there's someone, if there's particular, technologies or products or questions that you might have, let me know. And then if there's something that you think, that'd be great if it was covered, I'll see if I can find the right person to be able to drag in and have that conversation like we did with David today. Thank you very much to David to coming and joining us and spending some time. I hope you got something out of that conversation, particularly those who have been through some of our or have been through some of the processes of certification and skills validation and thing over the past. Maybe getting a bit more insight within there. Apart from that, this is our last one for the year, so really do appreciate your joining us. We will see you next year. For those that celebrate, Merry Christmas. For those that don't, hope that you get to spend some time with your family, and enjoy at least a little bit of downtime if it's that time of the year for you to be able to do that. Otherwise, we'll see you next year. So thank you very much. See you next year.